let's talk about dramaturgy a little bit. You mentioned the Wizard of Oz, and I think a lot of people will be familiar with the film and with the play, which follows fairly normal Aristotelian dramaturgy.
Absolutely.
Is it? But I think when I think about interactive theatre, it's much more. It's other forms that sort of spring to mind. Does interactive dramaturgies, do they kind of lend themselves to non-Aristotelian? Does it not matter? Do you have any thoughts on the structure of a story?
Well, the thing is, I think that we haven't yet come to the basic insight, or we haven't talked about it, that interactivity can be anything. An interactive performance can be anything, sort of. And it invites for participation, and some of the performances are very traditional in their forms, and they have small openings. They open, for instance, for participation in one scene, and then the performance closes, and then they move on. And the Wizard of Oz was done like this. So the research question there was, how far can I open up for participation and still, this was the director asking, and still maintain the fictional story? So there was the challenge of the Aristotelian dramaturgy and participation as opposites. So there's obviously something there. But on the other hand, there's also much more open performances, or more installation art, sort of, where the other side of the fan or the spectrum. And that, of course, resembles more installation art. It resembles playing, that we talked about earlier, about how playing is post-dramatic, or can be seen as post-dramatic. And of course then there's the challenge of a story, but that's also an artistical choice, I think. And I don't think that one is better than the other. I think that when you work with an Aristotelian dramaturgy, then the participation relates to that dramaturgy, and when you work more openly, then you have to find out, why do I want participation here in this installation? What are the challenges of this production?
I had another question for you that also relates to Aristotelian dramaturgy, which is whether it's still relevant. I think a lot of artists swear to the postmodern and post-dramatic because of arguing that we live in a very fragmented world.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, my first thought, I also work with children's literature, and we see within this field of research that I'm also in is the fascination for the good story, or for the traditional beginning, middle, end of the Aristotelian dramaturgy. So, and that also has to do with, of course, to appreciate, I think, the fragmented story, you have to know where the fragments come from. So there's I don't know if it's correct to say that there's an as you grow older, you learn at least to know, you learn how to understand the story, what to expect. You read fairy tales, so you are trained in the Aristotelian story, I think, as a child, and very many productions for children follow this. And we see that children are fascinated with the archetypical, can you say that? Or the traditional ways of storytelling.
Yeah.
And again, I would say that, but that doesn't mean they can't also appreciate the post-dramatic metafictional, but I think that's more advanced. And if you want to do that, even though I told you earlier that children play like that, you have to make them aware of it. That, of course, has to do with what age you're talking about. The older they get, the more experienced they are with fragmented stories, and they wouldn't react, I think, if they saw them perhaps when they were 10, 11, 12, then they would start to be familiar with it. But it's also a question of knowledge about dramaturgy, and that's something you need to learn, I myself didn't know about metafiction until I was in my 20s, I think, and it was a great experience. I thought, wow, I didn't know that this existed at all, and until then I enjoyed the classical stories, and I still do. Yeah.
But presumably you've also, to a certain extent, probably come across the metafictional in children's theatre particularly, even though we didn't know what it was. I mean, how many children's performances start with, hello, my name is so-and-so and I'm going to be playing whoever. I mean, this element of going in and out of character has always been present in children's theatre.
It has. It's the theatrical theatre. I don't know if that's the correct English word, but the theatre of...
the theatre that admits that it's theatre.
Yeah, yes, showing itself as theatre. And that, of course, is, I think, for children a very fruitful way of making theatre, because you are acknowledging a presence in the room together, which I myself believe to be a good way to start, because, and not the only way, but it's a good way to be reminded of the importance of finding the good or a way into the experience together. And I think that's where children might need more help than adults, even though I think many adults also need the same guide or the rules of the performance. And I think as long as you as an artist give that, you can do metafiction, you can do anything. But if you forget that it's not automatically understood, perhaps then you make it difficult for yourself.
I found as an adult watching interactive performances that I often get very unsure about what kind of participation I'm allowed.
Yes.
I think that's a huge aspect, surely, of.
Because it seems to be free participation, but we're also very self-conscious, even as children, I think, and we want to feel safe. So you have to establish ground rules that are not obvious but clear. Can you say that? That are clear. But of course, there are also artists that want to make it like scary for you. What's her name? Anne Liv Young, for instance.
Yeah.
All her work is about making me feel like, ooh. But as an adult, I can choose that, and that's where the ethics of theatre for children becomes difficult, because you want to not limit yourself to making safe performances. You want to challenge children, but when you challenge the fiction and reality line, sort of border, that is a place where it might be problematic. And then you have to know and be very aware of what you're doing, and you have to know that this is what you're doing, and you want to know why you're doing it. But I think that's also possible for good artists.